Good evening. Welcome to The Pipeline. This is the Western Standard's weekly news analysis show. I'm Cory Morgan. I'm the opinion editor and host of Triggered. Today, I'm hosting The Pipeline because Derek Fildebrand, who typically does this, is unavailable today. As always, though, I am joined by our news editor, Dave Naylor.
It's good to have somebody you can rely on at these things. Huh?
Yes, you're actually on time and ready and rolling.
On the air every week.
Yes. And we have senior reporter Melanie Risdon, who wasn't quite ready on time, but we still managed to get it all together.
I'll blame it on me.
Well, of course, it's just the new one in the group is going to take the picking on. So lots to cover as always today. So, I mean, what a busy news day. It's been a total
busy news month.
Yes, absolutely. But what a curveball we got thrown. I mean, we've been framing everything. We've been writing everything. All the coverage has been focused on the pushing of the Emergencies Act and getting it through Parliament and having that ratified, and now it's all stopped. Maybe if you can run through that, Dave, what just broke?
Well, it's got to be one of the biggest flip-flops in Canadian political history. On Monday, we needed the Emergencies Act because these horrible truckers and they were going to ruin the country, take over the government. Fast forward to Wednesday afternoon, the Prime Minister just announces that the Emergencies Act is no longer needed. The truckers have all gone home. The borders are no longer in danger of being blockaded. And if they are, the police have the measures to be able to deal with them. Why it took the Emergency Act for the police to move in to begin with, I guess, is one of the questions that's going to have to be answered. Premier Kenney immediately lambasted Trudeau, saying he had no reason at all for bringing it in, and he's going to continue the Alberta court challenge against it. And Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan says, well, look, this is a time, let's lift all vaccine mandates, with the lifting of the Emergencies Act. Let's lift everything and get back to being a proper country again. So it's been a whirlwind few days, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, Melanie, I mean, you've been following and watching this and have to rewrite or reapproach things basically as you go. What do you think perhaps motivated this sudden turnaround? I mean, something that we need so desperately bad on Monday night that we had to put the country on edge. And now, okay, I guess we'll just drop it.
Well, I think the pushback has been huge, I think, especially when it comes to, all of the stories around what transpired in Ottawa over the weekend, with there being a lot of stories of people being injured and hurt, and the stories that we published about the RCMP having comments, sort of a hidden conversation that we became aware of that showed they were sort of celebrating the fact that people had been trampled by a horse. And so I think there's just been a real perhaps shift in people's perception of this, bank accounts being frozen. I mean, we were hearing stories about people who donated $50. Somebody bought a t-shirt for $20 and had a bank account, frozen. I think a lot of people are really realizing, and I think, Trudeau is somebody who seems to like to go with, public opinion. He seems to be drawn to that. And so with the tides shifting, with there being what feels like a real push against this overreach from the government, I think he realized pretty quickly. Plus, I think there are a couple of lawsuits against the government.
I guarantee you the Liberals have been doing some internal polling, and the numbers they were getting were terrible, absolutely terrible. The debate, interestingly, is still going on in the Senate. They told the Senate, look, we have all this proof that there was sedition going on, but they refused to show the Senate any of their proof. So a lot of the Senate was not very happy. So there was even grumblings that it may not get through the Senate. And that's why Trudeau put a quick end to it. So, But, a combination of maybe that and internal polling and just a tremendous outcry of distaste for this whole thing.
There was one Liberal senator who did come out, actually, Liberal appointed senator, because they have that facade of being independent. And he said he's not going to support this Emergencies Act. And that could have been perhaps an indicator that this might not pass the Senate. That would be a terrific embarrassment for the Prime Minister if this got shut down in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. And it would seem that that's one of the main reasons he was worried about it. because, that's the only reason that it would explain such a extraordinary flip-flop, surely.
You were saying, Melanie?
Well, I thought, it was kind of an interesting vote when it came to Monday's vote being, sort of determined to be more of a non-confidence vote, or you know what I mean? Like it.
Oh, they never even would say if it was confidence vote or not, and they're
right.
playing coy with the process. And that, again, I think it upset the public. If you're looking
I think you're
to
right.
gain sentiment, that arrogance, that refusal to answer questions. I mean, you're asking us to embrace something huge and unprecedented, and you won't answer the questions. You said with the Senate, they won't say what their evidence is, and they won't even say if it's a confidence vote or not.
Yeah, the transparency, I think, has been an issue for sure all along in this. But even, knowing full well that Liberal MPs were coming out against it as well before the vote, but then they voted for it, sort of.
Yeah, on the
that-
basis
Well, on
of
the
it being
basis it might
confidence.
be a
Of the
confidence
confidence,
vote.
yeah. So
But certainly the NDP supported it all in. What's this going to do for their political?
Well, and I do want to
fortunes?
move on to that next. Before we do, though, we should talk about our sponsor. Of course, that's how we keep this show rolling, aside from our fantastic members and subscribers. And I want to talk about Bitcoin Well. Again, when we're talking digital currencies these days, when the government is making moves and seizing people's accounts, and you don't feel quite as secure with your savings any longer than you used to, you might want to put things into a new format. Digital currencies are a way to do it. Bitcoin Well is a Western Canadian company. These guys are excellent, actually. They're for people who've never dealt with digital currencies before. Their site is full of resources, and they're non-custodial. So again, if you're looking at the security of your funds, you keep your funds in your wallet. Bitcoin Well never has control of your funds. They just facilitate your ability to purchase it, get involved with it, and they will instruct you and teach you one-on-one on what it means, how to get it going, how to get it set up. Some of us here are already set up
they're
through
great.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to
And,
check my wallet to see if it's my $50 has grown
Yes, well,
substantially.
you got to start somewhere,
I have
right?
to retire on.
But I mean, they're great because that's what keeps a lot of people from getting into. We just don't know how. This is brand new. This is different. Well, these guys lead you through it step by step. They're a trustworthy, registered Canadian company. Check them out, bitcoinwell.com, and see if digital currencies are for you. All right. So thank you, Bitcoin Well. And getting on to what Dave started with. Yes, the NDP. I mean, of the biggest political losers, I think, out of this fiasco. I mean, Trudeau's looking weak, but Jagmeet Singh hitched his wagon to him. He ate a lot of political, or he's eating a lot of political crow right now. I'm sure a lot of his members were not happy in getting up and supporting Justin Trudeau with this. He had to whip his vote into shape. Now he's left hanging. He went through all of that for something that didn't even make it 2 full days. What are the implications of that, Dave?
Well, it's devastating for the NDP. If you remember back in the 70s, Tommy Douglas voted against Trudeau Sr. Invoking the Act, and I think a lot of old-time NDPers were very disappointed to see Jagmeet go along with Justin and as Emergency Act. So, there's already rumblings that started before this of internal squabbles and some leadership threats to Jagmeet Singh. So it'll be interesting to see whether those are amplified in the coming days. Certainly a mistake on his part, no doubt.
Yeah. So what do you read out of it, Melanie? With the NDP's more traditional stand, like for the little guy, for the working man, and looking for individual rights, and well, they kind of stepped away from that, and they've burned.
Yeah. To me, it just didn't seem like the right fit. Right from inception, right from what the Emergencies Act stood for, it's almost an attack on the working class in an essence. So it seemed like a strange fit. I don't know what promises or deals were made behind closed doors between the two parties. But I think you're right. They're kind of left holding a lot of nothing now.
Yeah, well, that fear of going to the polls, I'm sure, was a lot of what motivated Jagmeet Singh. Their party is not in good condition to go into another election, whether you like NDP or not. I mean, they haven't really had a leader who's engaged the public well since Jack Layton. And Mulcair didn't quite inflame the world. Singh's been kind of lackluster. They've been losing support in general, and I got a feeling that threat, if it had been Jack Layton, it looked like, hey, we might pick up 20 seats if he pulls the rug out from under us. He might have taken a stand of principle. It's all speculation, but to say, no, we don't want to go down that road. And
when your leader is wearing $1,000 suits and Rolex watches and is accepting multi-$1,000 rocking chairs, doesn't really say working man's party.
No,
does it?
that's a champagne socialist. is what that
Champagne
is.
socialist, as he's being described. But how far away from the party's roots are they going to let him go?
No, I mean the internal. They're wearing all of that too. I mean, they lined up the troops. They got behind Singh, but I think grudgingly so. And then when you take one for the team, and then suddenly you land flat, the leader is going to take a lot of flack. Seeing a year when we're seeing so many leaders torn down. I mean, if I was an ambitious NDP person looking, this is where you want to make your move. I mean, the Conservatives are without a leader. They're going to a leadership race. This would be the time perhaps to turn over the leadership of the NDP and seek somebody new in that spot as well. We might see some coverage, I think, in this next couple of days.
It'd be nice to get some fresh faces in on.
Wouldn't it?
It would. It certainly would, as a stale old place it is. Either way, we'll cover that more as it develops. I mean, this is just breaking and we're figuring out what happened. But boy, what a turnabout of events. I do want to cover one more of our sponsors as we go along, and that's the Canada Shooting Sports Association. And I don't think the NDP would like them terribly much either. The Liberals definitely don't like them because what they've been doing is supporting law-abiding, responsible firearm users. They've been doing it for years and years, and their name says it all. They're a sports association. They got resources, everything from trade shows to videos on safe use of firearms, whether you're hunting, collecting, target shooting, any of those things, shooting sports. They support you. And the other part is they've got a number of legal challenges up against the Liberal government, against those gun grabs they've been doing. It just seems every year they find a few more, they find an excuse, they suddenly illegalize them, they take them away from you. These guys have got court challenges, but they need your help. You've got to take out a membership with them so that they can help you. So get out there. It's a great website, as I said, for firearm resources and, of course, just as an activist group standing up for firearm rights. So I thank them for their sponsorship. And guys, send your thanks by getting in there and joining up with them. So getting finally in these news mess we've got, something that hasn't been getting all over the news, and it should be, has been that act of eco-terrorism out in BC. I mean, this should be headline. If anything might draw the government to bring in emergency sort of actions, you would think such an organized attack on a work site would draw it. What exactly happened? Now we're starting to see videos, Dave.
This was a frightening event, Cory, at the Coastal Gas Link pipeline in northern BC. An attack by up to 20 people armed with axes, all dressed in those white forensic police garbed uniforms. Came out of the bush and attacked vehicles and people on a logging road up to the construction site. Buses were set on fire with workers still in them. The footage shows these guys inside vehicles just hammering on them with axes. We had an interview with a guy called Trevor who was at the site, and he describes, it's utter terror having somebody maniac with an axe wielding, at you, and he describes his terror, and it's just unbelievable. What's just as unbelievable is some of the mainstream media coverage. Some of them are alleging that the attack A didn't even take place, where B was probably set up by the company. And then after one story, then it quickly fell off their news agenda. To me, it's Trudeau hasn't even commented on it. That's how wrong he is in this one. Hasn't even commented about it. A case of domestic eco-terrorism on his watch, no comment whatsoever. Somehow all these 20 people are able to vanish into thin air. Nobody's seen or heard from them since. This is the type of thing that should be on the top of everybody's tongue, not a bunch of truckers with a bouncy castle. Yeah, well, just for the sake of accuracy, whoever runs Trudeau's Twitter account did put one out saying they always condemn violent actions and wouldn't support something like this. But that was the extent of it, and it was a tweet. So, and there were no spelling errers, so it probably wasn't Justin himself. It was probably an aide. Yeah. But again, I mean, this is of a serious concern. I mean, Melanie, have you seen much for coverage out there on this?
No, I actually haven't seen very much for coverage on it. I was speaking with one of the lawyers that I speak with on a fairly regular basis, and he's been speaking with, he has some military background, and he has a lot of cohorts and friends who also came from military background. And he said, they've discussed this. It seemed very orchestrated. It seemed very well, precise, planned. They knew what they were doing. When we're talking about terrorism, when we're talking about eco-terrorism, he said, this is it for sure. This was, they had strategies that the military will use when they are infiltrating areas and whatnot. He had some pretty interesting things to say about how terrifying this action actually is in our country, and the fact that it has had such little response, if any, from the government, and again, from lack of media coverage. It's kind of astonishing.
Maybe this group of 20 all went to the David Suzuki summer camp on how to blow up a pipeline.
No, I mean,
that's where they learn their tactics from.
And we'll seize accounts and do things for anybody who looks like they're supporting a bouncy castle convoy. But David Suzuki, you talk about blowing up pipelines. I misspoke. Come on, guys. I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that gets inflamed when a public figure like him, misspeaks on garbage like talking about blowing up pipelines. And
he didn't misspeak. No,
not at all. And it was chilling. I mean, to see that. This is different. I mean, we've seen crazed protesters rushing police lines or carrying out vandalism, and they're usually a bunch of hippies and weirdos who go running out in a disorganized way. They can cause damage, they can be dangerous, but this was something altogether different. I mean, uniformed like that. Mm-hmm. The timing, I don't think, was a mistake either. Do you think it's a coincidence that when Trudeau pulled half of the RCMP all into Ottawa, they don't have any more field units going on? These guys choose this time, not to mention they blocked the road with burning trees and spikes and all sorts of stuff so that police couldn't get in to
and
respond.
Then shot flares at them. We got a terrorist group shooting flares at the police.
Yeah.
Like, where are the helicopters? Where are the tracking dogs, as Jay Hill of the Maverick Party said?
Well, and millions of dollars damage.
There just doesn't seem to be any concerted effort. Maybe there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. There doesn't seem to be any concerted effort. Maybe let's bring in an extra 100 RCMP officers to this now that they're not clearing bouncy castles away. We can focus on an actual terrorist attack and maybe do some investigating and find these people.
Well, that's it, because not one of them has been caught.
No.
And this, people looked at the turned over machinery and things like that. Some of the conspiracy theorists pointing out, well, you'd never be able to do that with an axe. No, and we talked about that earlier. Like, I used to work in the oil field. When you're in a winter camp location, you got diesel equipment. There's nowhere to plug it in. It's just not like in the city. If you freeze a diesel, it's not getting started again. So what you do is turn it on a high idle and you leave it running all night. And I imagine, I'm just guessing, but this would make sense to me, because you could tell, I mean, there were big pieces of equipment that were turned over and smashed, and you need another big piece of equipment to do that. Somebody broke into a large piece. With an axe, you could do that. You could smack the windows out, get inside. It's idling, it's warm, it's ready to roll. And then they attacked. You can see they attacked. Work trailers were ripped apart. Again, somebody could have been in those trailers. Somebody could have been between that machine and another machine. It's almost a wonder that somebody didn't get killed. And these guys, not one was caught. They're not going to stop where they're at. Not somebody that organized and that extreme. This is going to happen again. As you said, we haven't heard anything about it. I imagine and hope the police are working on this somewhere, even if we're not seeing it.
Let's hope it doesn't take a worker getting killed. And, setting a bus on fire with workers inside it, that could have led to, multiple deaths.
Well, and these extremists, and they're extreme. I mean, this is eco-terrorism, as we said, and they might have it in mind. We saw that with, it was a union action, but at the giant mine, I mean, they were willing to kill people for their cause. In this case, these activists might feel that if we need to kill somebody to save Mother Earth, maybe that's what it'll take. I mean, it's scary to think, but some people, there's some pretty wacko people out there, and they'll go to extremes. We've got such a bizarro world going on in Canada, where we've got, a very exceedingly peaceful protest of thousands, and the government has imposed the strongest legislative measures they possibly could upon them. And then we've had a literal act of eco-terrorism, and we barely see a peep.
I think I'll assign our BC reporter Reed Small to get a hold of Dr. Suzuki and see what he has to say about this latest incident.
Well, from what I've heard, tell Reed to lighten his voice and everything, because Dr. Suzuki does like the young ladies quite a bit. He might be more receptive to a candid phone call. Do what you can.
When's Derek coming back?
Jeez. Hey, I'm just talking. You got to do what you got to do to get the news.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's why I'm an opinion. Oh, well, either way.
Leave the news to the professionals, Cory.
That's what I'm...
Stick to your rants.
Yes, I think I'd better do that before we get pulled off the air or something. All right. Well, that was, enough to summarize. You guys have got a lot of work to do in that newsroom. It's been running like mad. We've got a lot of columns going up too that I've got to edit, and people submit them. It's been busy. for those who haven't subscribed already, you know, we got to remind you guys, get out there, take out a subscription with the Western Standard, westernstandardonline.com/membership. You get a free trial for a couple of weeks, and then it's $10 a month or $99 for a year, less than old newspaper subscriptions used to cost, and you get full access to everything on there. Share, you know, this with friends. I mean, we need to bypass this. We're seeing as we're talking about the media, mainstream media is not giving you the full picture anymore. We're there. And the more you guys help us with your memberships, the more resources we have, and we can get out there and make sure that news gets to you. So thank you all who have already subscribed to all of us. And thanks to those who are going to subscribe soon. Thank you, Dave and Melanie, for another episode of The Pipeline. Sans Derek. And we will see you on The Pipeline all next week, and I'll be on Triggered tomorrow.